Interstate 95. Yeah. All right, we've got another exciting I-95 episode, and I am thinking when you think of I-95, this is probably what you think of, the DC to New York section. So we're talking the Beltway, we're talking the Turnpike, we're talking the GWB, famous things, backbone of the East Coast. I-95, as I'm sure you know already, goes from Miami to Holton, Maine, and today specifically we are talking about its most busy section and probably the busiest section in America, the DC to New York section of I-95. You're watching Control City Freak. This is the YouTube channel where we talk about interstate highways and the places that they're signed to go to. If you dig this kind of content, why not give us a like? And if you really like it, then why not subscribe? Yeah, subscribe. Tell your friends who dig I-95. I should also make you aware, if this is your first time, you can request your exit for a $5 super sticker or super thanks in the comments. Got a bunch of them today and I really appreciate it. Excited to talk about those. You can request for New England. I'll let you guys know in the community section because there's a reasonable chance I will not be posting a video next week because I-95 is so hectic. All right, let's talk about northbound I-95. When we left off a couple episodes ago, we were crossing the Rappahannock River in Virginia, so here is where we are now. Very shortly into this, we get exit 140 for Stafford. I've actually spent some time here. My aunt used to live right around here. So this is, from here on, is kind of the first part of I-95 that I ever experienced, other than some very small parts in Florida. Not surprisingly, it is North 95 Washington at these random interchanges. And a few exits up, we get the exit for Quantico. So if you want to join the FBI, then this is the place for you. Don't tell them I sent you. And here's our first exit request for this episode. It is from Corte Manche 437. I hope I'm pronouncing that somewhere close to right. I'm sure it's not right. And this viewer wanted to see this exit of 160B. So we've got Virginia Highway 123, 160B for another place I'm sure I'm not going to be able to pronounce, along with Lake Ridge. We meet US 1, but more importantly, we're getting our first information about the Springfield interchange 8 miles away. One of the largest interchanges probably in the world, I'd imagine. And we see 95 is going to be north for Baltimore and New York City. So New York on the sign in Virginia. Pretty interesting. Still a ways away from DC. Also, that is something like 5 states away, which vastly blows I-80's New York signage in Ohio out of the water. Although at this point we are closer to New York than you are in Youngstown. This New York sign was requested by Zim Z, so thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Here we are meeting Virginia Highway 286, the Fairfax County Parkway, which also is a freeway itself. Corte Manche 437 also wanted to see the Springfield interchange, exit 170, so we're going to see a little bit of that here. So we see here North 95 and East 495 Baltimore straight ahead, which is interesting because that's actually leaving the main line. North 395, before this exit was reconstructed, that was going straight because really you're still on the Harry G. Shirley Memorial Highway, so it is kind of straight into Washington on 395. And then North 495 for Tyson's Corner, which isn't even an incorporated city, but it does make sense as a control for 495. Here we are going straight on 95, and you see we are elevated onto the ramps already, and we can see below us 395 North Washington and 495 North Tyson's Corner coming up here in this interchange. 95 is kind of constructed here so that we have the north and southbound lanes right next to each other, although the southbound lanes are a bit higher up. And here's what it looks like as we merge into 495, the Capital Beltway. So they are separated for a little while and will join together soon. We do get a local and an express. It looks like it's not a pay express, so that's cool. So through traffic for Baltimore, local traffic for Alexandria, and at random interchanges it is 95, 495 for Baltimore. We're approaching the Wilson Bridge, and it is a drawbridge, so prepare to stop when flashing. So far as I know, it is the only drawbridge on the interstate highway system, although there might be another one somewhere that I am forgetting about. Mike Scheinberg, I hope I'm saying that right, wanted to see exit 177B for Alexandria with US 1, so here is a look at that. Looks like pretty heavy traffic at this point here too. And we are heading onto the bridge over the Potomac River, and we get National Harbor exits coming up. That's almost a billboard. I think National Harbor is a private development. And then we get a laundry list of exits coming up as well, with 95, 495 on the bottom line, and Baltimore-Washington Parkway as sort of our secondary control here. Here's a look at the bridge, and this is during the very short section that we actually cross into the District of Columbia. It has no exits, but it is the only time that 95 is within DC, and I believe that is where the bridge draws up as well. We've got North 295 coming up for Washington and National Harbor, and we are officially welcomed into Maryland. At the first interchange in Maryland, just to show you, it is still signed north for Baltimore, so that makes sense. What are they going to sign, Laurel or something? We're meeting US 50, which I think is also Secret Route 595, and it is signed for Washington and Annapolis. It will go over the Bay Bridge. Timothy Ault wanted to see West 450 for Annapolis Road, exit 20B, so here we have that. Thank you so much. And here we're meeting the Baltimore-Washington Parkway, which was signed Maryland State Route 295 for a while, but I think maybe no longer has its number since it's officially owned by the National Park System, and it's signed South Washington, North Baltimore. Beautiful road. I actually have taken that many times between Washington and Baltimore, and it's lovely. And we are going to be splitting off the Beltway soon, so we get 495 West Beltway and Silver Spring, 95 North Baltimore. So good signage there. Once we are in the 95 lanes, we have a comically large 95 shield as we continue to the right, and a carpool parking exit where 95's stub, when it was to be built through Washington, is. So I guess Maryland really likes to build random park and ride parking lots in interstate highway stubs inside of beltways. Here we're meeting a fairly new road, the Inter-County Connector, Toll 200, and this interchange is pretty interesting because it's exits 31, 32, 33. Wow, that is quite a distributor lane here. Here we meet 175 for Columbia and Jessup, and we are on 95 North Baltimore and New York. For some reason, Maryland decides Baltimore by itself is not enough, so we get New York on there as well. We're meeting 895, the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel Thruway, and it is the only interstate in Baltimore that I have never been on for a single second, although if it's the kind of road that if you do take it, you have to take pretty much all of it, so I've never had any need to. And 195 is coming up as well. Here's our exit for 195 for BWI Airport, and 695 is coming up shortly. Here's our interchange with 695, so it's signed east for Glen Burnie and Key Bridge, and west for Towson. Cross over the Baltimore-Washington Parkway once again, but we do not have an interchange with it going northbound. And we pass this large Baltimore smokestack with the Baltimore skyline kind of in the background. We'll see that a bit better in the southbound section. And we meet 395 North for downtown and Inner Harbor. It goes right to downtown Baltimore, passes the stadiums, and 95 is now signed north for New York. We're approaching the Fort McHenry Tunnel, and this is our last free exit before you have to pay to go through the tunnel. Here's the entrance to the tunnel. Interesting that we have these 4 bores, 2 for eastbound and 2 for westbound. I have only taken it the other direction. I've never taken it this way, and I've only been through it once, because again, never had any need to, because driving through Baltimore, I've always taken 83 or 395. And here is our toll for the Fort McHenry Tunnel once we come out of the other side. We get Boston Street and the Baltimore Travel Plaza coming up, which is where I was the one time I went through this tunnel. I went to pick up my buddy at the bus, and the Baltimore Travel Plaza is everything you would expect from a truck stop in an industrial part of Baltimore. Here's a look at the Baltimore Travel Plaza. And now we're getting some more express lanes, but this time it is a toll express lane to get to the northern parts of the Baltimore suburbs, Toll 95 Express, and it has no access to 695. And now we're meeting the Baltimore Beltway for the second time, so 95 New York, west 695 for Towson, east for Essex. So that makes sense as well. At random interchanges, it is 95 North New York. And now we see junction 543 to Aberdeen 9 New York 171. I guess we should talk about this New York thing. It is weird that Maryland signs New York and that DC and Virginia even are signing New York on 95 and completely ignoring Philly. Although it is hard because the fastest way to New York is to not go through Philly, so signing Philly doesn't quite make sense either. I guess maybe signing Wilmington would be the way to go, but I mean, Wilmington is much less famous and much smaller than those other two, but it is where you have the decision point. And here we get the Maryland House service area as we are on a free part of 95, but it's run by a turnpike association here. We cross the river, and this is a toll bridge, fairly expensive toll bridge, and US 40 crosses nearby. It's also a toll bridge that's equally expensive. You can cross it on US 1, but it is quite far away. And we see our toll coming up is 12 bucks! Wow! It's $5 when I used to drive on this, and I complained about that. I mean, $6 for a Maryland Easy Pass, but if you are not a local person, you gotta pay 12 bucks? And then we get the Chesapeake House service area. So this is kind of weird that they have these two service areas. They're only about 15 miles apart, so I don't know why. Maybe both of them stay busy, I don't know. And not surprisingly, still North 95 New York at random interchanges. We finally get Wilmington as a secondary. Wilmington should at least be a secondary from Baltimore on. If anything, you should alternate New York and Philly, or make Philly and New York both on there, and just the next exit, the first line, so that we don't really have a real secondary, we just have Philly and New York. And welcome to Delaware. Hey guys, we're in Delaware. Right as soon as we get into Delaware, we get the Delaware toll. So for cash, $4, fairly reasonable considering the Maryland one was $12. However, this is the easiest toll ever to ditch. So you can get off at the last exit in Maryland and drive a few minutes out of your way and then come back on the first exit in Delaware, and you skip the entire toll plaza. It takes an extra 5 or 10 minutes, but you know, $4, if you're making less than $100 an hour doing whatever it is you do, it's probably worth it to skip around this toll. And at interchanges in this part of Delaware, we get 95 North for Delaware, Memorial Bridge, and Wilmington. So that makes sense. We've got the big Delaware split here. So Delaware has a very small part of the Interstate Highway system. 95 is its only two-digit road, but it has a fairly important junction right here, this 95 and 295. 95 495 for Wilmington, Philadelphia, 295 for Delaware, Memorial Bridge, NYNJ. And I do remember the Springfield interchange in Virginia used to have an NYNJ thing there too for North 95. After 295 splits off, we now get 495, and it is signed for Port of Wilmington and Philadelphia, and 95 just for Wilmington. I've driven to Philly a few times. I've never taken 495 around. I can't imagine it saves much time. I imagine taking 95 does just fine. Here's a look at downtown Wilmington, where somehow basically every corporation in America is headquartered in one building for tax purposes. And Dan Young wanted to take a look at the exit for Marsh Road, exit 9 in Delaware, so thanks so much, really appreciate that. Here we go. 95 now signed north for Chester in Philadelphia. Why Chester on there? Pennsylvania does that a little bit, but why is Delaware playing along? Philly works there. We don't need Chester. It's like if 94 in Michigan had a sign for Gary in Chicago. And welcome to Pennsylvania. No rest for the weary here, huh? We had North Carolina last time, and now we get Pennsylvania again, so it never ends. As you can see in that sign in the distance, 95 is signed for Chester and Philadelphia. But then Chester goes away. On 322, we get signed for Commodore Barry Bridge and Philadelphia. And that bridge is because that's where 322 is going to be going. In fact, we see 322 getting off right here, signed for the Barry Bridge and New Jersey. Even though we had these overhead signs for Chester, there are no exits that list Chester along this route. Maybe there was a Chester next 3 exits or something thing that I missed, but there is no sign for Chester anywhere, so I have no idea why Chester was on those overheads. And now we get 95 North Philadelphia, 476 Plymouth Meeting. I mean, signing suburbs is okay on a 3-digit road, but Plymouth Meeting is like 2,000 people, and 40% of the land area in Plymouth Meeting is just 476 and 76's interchange. Maybe King of Prussia because they have the big mall there. I know 476 doesn't go there, but it is the way to there from here. Or Allentown. We don't have a direct connection with I-76 westbound, so here we're getting 276 West Valley Forge, which I am definitely not a fan of. Should be 76 Harrisburg. We're crossing the river, and Philadelphia is making the same mistake that they make on the Brent Spence and the same mistake that they make in St. Louis on 64. We're putting our route into the city on the lower deck so you can't see anything. This would be a beautiful skyline view of Philadelphia if we were on the top deck, but instead the top deck is looking at, I don't know, like the airport. Brian Bagenstose, I hope I'm saying that correctly, I imagine I'm probably not, wants to look at the Broad Street exit. So we've got the Broad Street exit right here, home of all of the Philadelphia sports teams. So kind of cool how they're all right together. There is a train stop right there, so that's neat. And we're also getting 76 East for Walt Whitman Bridge coming up too. Got a closer look at the stadiums, whatever they're calling the new Spectrum these days, and whatever they're calling the new Veterans Stadium these days. Eagles fans, by the way, it was holding. It was definitely holding. You didn't get robbed. Try not cheating. And we are meeting I-76, and it is 95 north with no control city. 76 just gets Walt Whitman Bridge. So we only get a sign for the bridge that we can see in the distance there. They don't mention anything in New Jersey, Atlantic City, anything like that, so that's not great. Meeting 676 for Central Philadelphia and Independence Hall, and 95 still gets no control city northbound. I feel like they just really don't want to sign New York and Philadelphia. Here is our actual split with 676, and we are still 95 north, no control city. I guess New York doesn't sign them either, so I suppose I understand, but these East Coast cities are so petty. And we do see the Ben Franklin Bridge in the background there. So here's a better look at the Ben Franklin Bridge. Quite an impressive bridge. And a look at the Ben Franklin Bridge was requested by Ashley, who is our second person ever to tip $50. Wow! So thank you so much, Ashley. Really appreciate that. And we've got this Holiday Inn wedged in between the river and the freeway where there's basically nothing. I don't know who's staying there. And here from the ramp we can see East 676 for Ben Franklin Bridge right there, and we see the awesome gates of the Ben Franklin Bridge right above us on the freeway on 95. At these random interchanges we are on 95 North Trenton for reasons. I mean, yeah, 95 kinda used to go to the Trenton area, but it hasn't for a while. So yeah, Trenton definitely should not be the sign anymore. Ashley also requested a look at the Betsy Ross Bridge exit, and I apologize about the quality of this. I just couldn't get a good street view going in the northbound direction for some reason. It kept jumping off onto different parts, so I had to go in southbound lanes and turn around. And again, 95 north, no control city. And thank you again, Ashley. Sean Gorelik, hope I'm saying that right, requested Woodhaven Road here in North Philly, so I appreciate that. Thank you so much. 95's got plenty of room for a control city on that sign. I don't know why they got nothing. Up ahead, we are meeting East 295 for Trenton. This used to be Mainline 95. 95 itself is going to be signed north to New Jersey Turnpike, New York. So finally, a New York sign. And we get closer to this fairly new interchange. There was a huge gap in I-95 for the longest time. There was no way to get from Philly to New York directly on 95 because a bunch of rich people in New Jersey railed against it going through rural areas, so they couldn't build the Somerset Freeway. I'm old enough to have had road atlases that had the dots going through New Jersey showing where it was going to be, and it took them years to sort this out, decades. It was obvious in the 80s that it was never going to happen, yet it wasn't until, I don't know, 6-7 years ago that they finally completed this interchange to get to 295 to 276 from here, because they always refused to build interchanges with interstates and toll roads, so they didn't originally build it when they built it. Very silly all around, very silly situation, but 95 is at least complete now. And here's what it looks like on the ramp going over to what used to be 276 and is now I-95. We even get an exit sign coming up on this ramp. They treat it like it's a through-line interstate. And here we are merging in with the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and this part has long existed, but it wasn't I-95 until recently. We have this exit with US 13, and we get North 95 to New Jersey Turnpike, New York. Across the Delaware River, and we just get this side-facing New Jersey sign, so I wonder if that's as good as we're going to do so far as welcome signs go. But we get a real welcome sign, sort of. We don't necessarily get welcome to New Jersey, we get welcome to the New Jersey Turnpike, but at least that's something. A lot of the times we don't get anything on New Jersey. And here is our toll gate for getting onto the Jersey Turnpike. Here we pass 295, and of course we have no exit for it whatsoever, because why would you want to have two major freeways be able to interact with each other? So we're getting Jersey Turnpike south for Camden and Wilmington. Yeah, because Baltimore doesn't exist. and 95 North, New York City. I suppose going in this direction, it does make sense to say Camden and Wilmington. Coming from New Jersey and going southbound, it certainly would not. And we'll see in the southbound section whether or not they do that. So there's the southbound New Jersey Turnpike exit, and we are going to have a division. Cars only on the left, trucks and buses and cars on the right. And here we go. So we have 2 carriageways on the Jersey Turnpike from this point. And here's what it looks like as we merge into the Jersey Turnpike itself. Doesn't look like much traffic on this particular day. Counting the cars on the New Jersey Turnpike, and just see like 7. Luke O1234 requested exit 7A for 195 for Trenton and Shore Points. Such an East Coast thing, Shore Points there. And we can see the overhead gantries in both carriageways here at 95 North, New York City. So thank you, Luke. And because of the scale of this road, we don't have our normal exit signs. Even the exit signs themselves are overhead signs. Boss King Inc. requested exit 8A for Jamesburg and Cranberry, so Highway 130, State Highway 32, here it is. Thank you so much. Lots of Jersey Turnpike exits, I love it. Thank you, New Jersey. So we have exit 9 for New Brunswick, going to Rutgers University right here, and this was requested by 732 Media. Thank you so much. I actually had 2 requests for this exit from BobWhit and from Warren Freitag, so I hope I am saying both of those correctly. Exit 10 for Metuchen, both of them wanted to see Metuchen, but this is also the exit for Perth Amboy, and that is the direction I went the one time I ever drove on the Jersey Turnpike. I got off here to head over to Staten Island in New York ultimately. And because I had 2 requests, I will show this exit from both carriageways. This is from the local carriageway, the other was from the express carriageway. Patrick Gast wanted to see the exit for the Garden State Parkway, so here is a look at that, and I appreciate that. Thanks so much. I appreciate the Metuchen exit people as well, if I did not already say that. Woodbridge is not a control city for the Garden State Parkway. It is a control city for US 9. Garden State Parkway, when I looked a little further down, has no control city in either direction, so that's kind of weird. We're meeting 278 for Elizabeth and Staten Island. We see I forget the name of that bridge in the background that crosses over to Staten Island. Elizabeth, I know from the introduction to The Sopranos, so we're seeing a little Sopranos stuff here. We're meeting I-78, and this is our first route that goes directly into Manhattan for the Holland Tunnel, and now we are on 95 George Washington Bridge instead of New York, since you can go either way to go to New York from here. Kind of funny that 78 just gets Newark Airport and Holland Tunnel. They only get places immediately nearby and not any further. On the distributor lane, 78 East does get Bayonne, Jersey City, and Holland Tunnel, so we have a couple New Jersey places to talk about. But westbound, only Newark Airport, even though there's a lot more 78 West left than there is East at this point. And north of I-78, we are now on 3 carriageways, so we're getting to an enormous-sized freeway at this point. At this point, the Jersey Turnpike / I-95 is going to be switching to an east and a west section. So we have 2 entirely different roads with the same name, and there's a lot going on here. So we see on the east side, it's signed for 2 US 46, 2 I-80, and Lincoln Tunnel, and for the west leg, it's signed for 280 and George Washington Bridge. Most of these things are actually false. For US 46, for I-80, and for the George Washington Bridge, you can take either way. It doesn't matter. For Lincoln Tunnel, it's a little better to take the east one. For 280, you have to take the west one. And here's a view of the New York skyline from this area. I decided to take the eastern section, by the way, so we're on exit 15E. There's sign W on the western one. So we are getting an exit for Truck 1 and 9, Jersey City and Newark. And at this point, E and W are actually right next to each other. We see southbound lanes right next to us and then more northbound lanes after that. It's kind of 2 freeways that are directly next to each other. Truck 1 and 9 are the Pulaski Skyway, which is a pretty awesome looking bridge. I drove across that because I wanted to avoid the Jersey Turnpike for as long as possible. And we're crossing a river here. You can see this on the introduction to The Sopranos too. We've got 2 freeways, the east one and the west one, northbound lanes, southbound lanes, all like that. So 2 totally different roads that have the same name. And here's another scene we can see in the opening in The Sopranos, the Meadowlands, and we can see the west lanes a little bit away from us, and we are still on the east lanes. Looks like there's more trucks on the west lanes. We're going to be meeting 495 for the Lincoln Tunnel, State Highway 495. This used to be Interstate 495 because they planned to run it across Manhattan and connect with the Long Island Expressway. I don't know, the 50s and 60s were insane. They planned to bulldoze a whole freeway right through like the most expensive real estate in the world in Midtown Manhattan. And we have 95 North, George Washington Bridge going straight. Whether you continue to the George Washington Bridge or take the Lincoln Tunnel, either way, you're going to pay this toll. The Vince Lombardi service area. A winning service area if there ever was one. So we're getting toward the top as far north as I-95 goes in New Jersey. This is still the east leg, so we see West 80 for Patterson and North 95, Junction 46, George Washington Bridge. But in the west leg, you have the same choice. You can still go West 80 or you can go North 95. So this is the very start of I-80 off of northbound I-95 here. I only showed it from southbound I-95, I think, in my I-80 video. It is pretty cool. These two titans meeting each other right here. Looks like they can change the control cities here like an old-timey baseball scoreboard. I wonder what they would change it to if not George Washington Bridge. And 46 for the Ridgefields. And now we're getting signs for upper level and lower level. Upper level, all trucks have to go on the upper level. Lower level will have the local New Jersey exits that we have in the Palisades over here. And we see another interesting looking sign talking about the George Washington Bridge upper level and lower level coming up. Here's our last exit before the toll bridge in Fort Lee. And we can see in the other lanes over there, George Washington Bridge, New York City. Pretty cool sign here, North 95 to 87, New England, Long Island. Okay, we get to the toll booth for the GWB and $15. Although, I mean, there's a million other ways to get in New York, so I'm not too worried about that one. This is as close as we can get going in this direction because for whatever reason, we can't do street view for this particular bridge. But we can do it for the tunnels or any other bridge in the New York area. So here's the other side of the George Washington Bridge, the Manhattan side, and turned around, this is what it looks like. And we enter the only two-digit freeway that enters and leaves Manhattan, I-95, and we see we get an exit for the Henry Hudson Parkway right here, and we're gonna get another one for the FDR. So we are in Manhattan far enough north that the FDR and the Hudson are quite close to each other. We're going to be getting our exit for the FDR, and 95 north is now the Cross Bronx Expressway, or it will be once we cross the East River. Get a sign for the Major Deegan Expressway coming up, and we cross the East River, only 3 lanes going each way in New York City, so I think that's probably the better way to go. You don't want to build a giant freeway right through the middle of a large city like this. And 95 North, Cross Bronx Expressway, and New Haven, Connecticut. 87, the Major Deegan for Albany and Queens, and Yankee Stadium, this exit too. This is what that sign used to look like though. We had New England and Long Island as the control cities for I-95. They have since changed it to New Haven, which is the better way to go. And here's a look at the East River and the last bit of Manhattan that we will see. And now this is what it looks like on the Cross Bronx Expressway. Meeting exit 6A. This was requested by DDR Dangan Vlogger 21. I'm sure I'm not saying that the right way, but I appreciate your request. Thank you so much. And exit 6A for 678, only getting Whitestone Bridge as its control city. And the same user also requested 6B, which is 295 South, the Throgs Neck Bridge. Again, no control city, just a bridge. So thank you so much. The Hutchinson Parkway, nice parkway, exit right here at exit 9. And at random interchanges, it is 95 North, New Haven. And this is the last exit in the Bronx onto I-95. Now we're in Westchester County, so we get an exit for Larchmont, exit 17. And this was requested by TNS22, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And now we are meeting 287 again. Wow, seems like a long time ago we met 287 for the first time. And it is signed for the Governor Cuomo Bridge, the Tappan Zee Bridge. And US 1 signed south for Rye, which I only know is the home of Don Draper. And after that, we go into Connecticut, which will be a different episode. And if you didn't figure it out yet, we are not doing southbound in this one because there's just too much to talk about in the Acela corridor. So I'm going to give you Todd's the way it should be. I'm going to say it should be northbound Washington, Baltimore, maybe Wilmington, then Philadelphia, New York, George Washington Bridge once we pass 78, then the Bronx would work once we are on the Manhattan Expressway, and finally New Haven. All right, thank you so much for watching this episode of Control City Freak. I really appreciate it, and we will be back soon, possibly not next week, might be 2 weeks, with more I-95 action. So thank you so much for all of your requests. I really appreciate it. I'll put those in the description of this video too, the list of people. My name is Todd, and until next time, keep on trucking.